Hi there. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about a question I get asked often on podcast interviews. And that question is, why do I think that so many people are struggling to solve their chronic health problems? And so this video is going to be a little bit of a breakdown as to why I think that is and why I think it's harder today in this day and age than it was even 10 years ago. So first and foremost, I think a lot of people are a little bit out of touch with the messages that their bodies are sending them. What I mean by that is we are very data-driven and app-driven and tech-driven these days. So in order for us to, I guess, think that that something might be awry in our body, we oftentimes turn to blood work that's done routinely from our doctor's offices. We also turn to a tech or an app that might tell us that our sleep is off or our HRV is off. And so we're not necessarily really in tune with listening to messages coming from the body. Messages coming from the body would be symptoms, things like, oh, that stomach pain, that's happening more frequently. Or, gosh, I don't typically get that much gas or bloating after I eat that. That's interesting. Or, I have a headache this morning. I woke up with a headache. That's something that's not normal. And so when one is in tune with our body, when we check in with our body regularly, we start to pick up on messages that our body is telling us, messages that are telling us that something is a little bit off, different than how we normally feel. And so I think that we allow those messages to kind of go ignored to the extent that then we get to the point where we develop some more severe symptomatology. And so that's one thing that I think is happening. It's like we wait either consciously or unconsciously until the point where our symptoms are just very, very disruptive to our quality of life, as opposed to, why do I have that headache? And then maybe assessing what I can do to support it, maybe trying some things to make the headache go away, and then allowing my body to more easily return back to homeostasis. The second thing that I think is happening these days is our living environment and working environment is changing drastically. These days, the clients that I'm seeing have very complex chronic illness conditions, things like oftentimes it's not just one of these, but it's actually a lot of these combined. Oftentimes I have clients come to me with mold or mycotoxin illness, Lyme and Lyme co-infections, diagnoses of POTS or dysautonomia, several autoimmune conditions, and then lots of the symptomatology, of course, that comes with those things. Things like the brain fog, the extreme fatigue, the insomnia, the digestive issues, the muscle fatigue with exertion, the inability to even exert the body, the poor recovery that can happen with it as well, the chronic pain or the increased pain that can happen. And so I'm seeing a lot more intense symptoms, and these intense symptoms often cover a variety of categories. And so why is that? What's going on? Well, first and foremost, I do think that our living environment is way more toxic these days than it ever was. We're now oftentimes living in or working in a water damaged building. So I do think mold is definitely an issue. Mold is going to also grow way easier in an environment that has high non-native EMFs. So I think the reason why that we're seeing more issues with water damaged buildings and then mold symptoms or mold illness is a direct correlation of the increase in non-native EMFs that's happening in our world every second. Remember that non-native EMFs come from wireless sources. So computers, cell phones, Bluetooth devices, cell phone towers, those sorts of wireless or like the Alexas and the smart technologies we have in our homes. So smart meters on our thermostat and smart meters, smart technology for our phone, our washing machine, our dryer, our refrigerator. All of these things are now smart technologies, and they're all constantly emitting wireless radiation. This wireless radiation never actually leaves the earth. It stays trapped in between the surface of the earth and a layer in the atmosphere called the ionosphere, and literally just kind of bounces back and forth in this cavity. And we are living between the surface of the earth and the ionosphere. And so because of that, we're just being continually bathed in more and more non-native EMF frequencies. And so I think that's why now, within the past 10 years, 15 years especially, mold illness is becoming more and more common. That mold is not only growing better in the water damaged buildings, but I also think that it's thriving in a high non-native EMF environment that's found in the human body as well, based on our proximity to all of these wireless technologies. In addition to this, but beyond the potential for mold and other toxins in our indoor living space, not to mention like all of the other flame retardants and other endocrine disrupting chemicals and toxins that are in our interior environments, are in our clothes, it's in the water we drink. But I also think that a huge thing that's an issue these days is the circadian disruption that comes from our indoor living. Remember, light bulbs are one blend of light frequencies that are coming from the light that are very foreign and very different than the light frequencies that come from nature. So remember, sunlight is always changing in the blend and the frequencies and the intensity of the light that comes from it, from dawn till solar noon, back until dusk. It's always changing. And it's the changing blend of the colors. It's the changing brightness of the sun also that will plays a key role in organizing our circadian rhythm, maintaining our circadian rhythm and our circadian, the circadian signaling that our body relies on. Every cell in my body has 100,000 tasks happening every single second. And they're reliant, the majority of those tasks are reliant on accurate timing, an accurate circadian clock mechanism in my brain, communicating the accurate time of day to every single cell. And so because we're living in indoor environments where the light frequency is very different from natural light, and it's oftentimes never changing, it almost puts our bodies in this state of twilight zone, right? This zombie land where we don't know what time of day it is correctly. And so we can't organize and coordinate all of our tasks, which makes it very difficult for the body to do something called return to homeostasis. Homeostasis is a fancy word for basically what is the thriving state of the body. If I get really cold, my body has mechanisms to heat me back up to regular body temperature. If I get really hot, my body has mechanisms to cool me back down to normal body temperature. That's just one example of homeostasis. And my body always is trying to do that. My body just doesn't want to stay cold all the time. My body's always trying to bring me back into homeostasis. And that's the same thing that's true when we have mold in our bodies or aluminum or other potential toxins that are bringing us out of homeostasis. The body wants to come back to it. One of the key signals that the body relies on for coming back to homeostasis is a circadian light from our environment. So it's the natural frequencies of light that we're meant to tune into all day long, that humans would naturally have been a part of 500 years ago, that are just now absent these days because we live in a very modern indoor lighting environment that's very foreign to any light that would be coming from nature. And so that's another thing that I think is a huge issue. We're in these living environments and working environments that are just very unnatural and really throwing off our circadian rhythms and all the things that are dependent on a strong circadian rhythm. And beyond that, I also think that we don't recognize how much time we actually truly are indoors. Maybe, for example, if all I was going to do was run into the grocery store for an hour once a week to go grocery shopping and be under that garbage fluorescent lighting, that wouldn't be very impactful at all. My body would easily be able to recover from that fluorescent lighting exposure, and it really wouldn't have much of an impact on my circadian rhythm. However, these days, we are spending approximately 93, if not more, 94% of our time either indoors or in a vehicle. And don't kid yourself, in being in a vehicle with closed windows is also a very foreign lighting environment, because those window films are designed to block a lot of the UV light. Those window films are designed to block a lot of the infrared. And so we have to recognize that even being in what we might consider a natural light environment with closed windows is actually still a foreign lighting environment to my circadian clock mechanism in my brain. And so that's just another thing to be aware of. And then lastly, when we're going to sleep at night and we turn off all the lights, it's hard to find true darkness these days. right? There's a lot of light pollution now happening. And it's at night when we sleep that the body really goes into deep repair mode to heal the damage that might be happening in our body based on what our chronic illness journey is. And if we can't, get melatonin release to put us to sleep at a circadian appropriate time, when all the other circadian repair hormones are also being released. So spoiler alert, that's around 10 p.m., give or take, depending on the season. But if we're not getting to sleep then and not releasing adequate amounts of melatonin then to help run a lot of our repair and our healing programs, then again, we're waking up in a state that hasn't been repaired. So we're continuing to accrue damage and inflammation from these chronic illnesses and chronic disease states that we never get a chance to optimize at night. That's what sleep is designed to do. And so like assessing our sleep environment and the darkness of our sleep environment is also a key thing that's just not really in our awareness these days. And so just a quick tip there is, if you can put your hand about a foot in front of your face, and if you can see it clearly, or even, fairly visibly at night when you're sleeping, your sleep space is too bright and you need to potentially use blackout curtains. Or I even have had clients who've had to tape around their curtains to give themselves a truly dark environment when they're asleep. And so I think all of these things really add up to pulling our body out of homeostasis and not giving our body the cues it needs during the day with light signaling, or the repair it needs at night with sleep in true darkness to allow our body to come back to homeostasis. So as I said before, the damage and the inflammation just keeps accruing, and it adds up to more and more and more, which is why it's not just one autoimmune disease, it's a constellation of autoimmune diseases. That's why it's not just Lyme disease, it's Lyme plus POTS, or it's a histamine intolerance plus mold, right? Plus mast cell activation. It's a lot of things put together. And so that is why I harp on natural light outside in the morning. That's why I harp on blocking on artificial light at night as a foundational practice that we must do to set the stage for our body to do what it naturally wants to do, which is heal and bring us back into that state of thriving. It just needs the correct cues to do so.